Dominic hadn't eaten proper food in 3 weeks, living off synthetic nutrient packs while hauling cargo through deep space had left him craving anything real. That's what brought him to the Crimson Plate, the most exclusive restaurant on Nexus Station. The host, a tall arachnid with gleaming obsidian eyes, clicked their mandibles appreciatively at his credit balance. "We have a very special menu for discerning human customers," they chitter, leading Dominic through a maze of private dining pods suspended in the void of space. Dominic adjusted his worn leather jacket, feeling distinctly out of place among the station's elite. His weathered face and calloused hands marked him as a working man, but credits spent the same no matter who held them. The pond's interior was lined with shimmer silk and rare living crystals that pulsed with soft light. "Our chefs specializes in unique protein preparations," the host explained, manipulating the environmental controls. "Something fresh, perhaps fresh, would be good." Dominic nodded, not really paying attention. His eyes were drawn to the spectacular view of the nearby nebula, its swirling colors painting the pod in ethereal light. The host departed with another click of mandibles, leaving Dominic alone with his thoughts and the vast expanse of space. He'd saved up for months for this meal, skipping maintenance on his ship's non-essential systems. One proper dinner wouldn't bankrupt him. When the serving door slid open again, Dominic expected to see his meal. Instead, 2 armed guards entered, dragging the struggling figure between them. His hand instinctively moved toward the plasma pistol hidden beneath his jacket. Old habits from his military days died hard. The figure was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin was a pale lavender, marked with bioluminescent patterns that shifted like starlight. Silver eyes, wide with terror, met his, and a musical voice cried out, "Please help me." "Your dinner, sir," one of the guards announced, forcing the woman into a chair. "A chef recommends consuming while fresh. The flavor enhancers take time to properly saturate the tissue." Dominic's stomach turned as realization this wasn't a restaurant. It was something far more sinister. The woman's restraints hummed with energy, keeping her bound to the chair as she pleaded, "I'm a scientist, not food." "They're using this place to," a guard struck her, cutting off her words. "Some clients enjoy conversation with their meal," the guard sneered, "but we recommend a quick dispatch for optimal taste." Dominic stood slowly, his military training taking over as he assessed the situation. 2 guards armed with standard neural disruptors, 1 exit, and 1 innocent person about to be murdered for someone's twisted idea of cuisine. "Is there a problem, sir?" The second guard's hand moved toward his weapon. "Yeah," Dominic replied, his voice deadly calm. "I'm not much for conversation. While I eat, could you give me some privacy?" The guards exchanged glances, then nodded. "Of course, sir. Simply press the call button when you're finished, and we handle the disposal as soon as the door slid shut." Dominic moved his fingers, flew over the restraint controls, deactivating them. With practice, teased military-grade tech, he muttered, "But outdated. Can you walk?" The woman rubbed her wrists, her starlight patterns flickering with emotion. "Yes, I'm Lyra. And you're either my savior or playing with your food." Dominic bailed. "And I prefer my dinner." "Doesn't talk back." He pulled out his pistol, checking the charge. "I've got a ship docked in the commercial sector. Assuming you'd rather not stay for dessert." A small smile crossed Lyra's face. "I think I've lost my appetite." Her expression hardened. "But there are others. This place, it's not just a restaurant. They're conducting experiments, using the clients as unwitting test subjects for something bigger." Dominic sighed, already plotting escape routes in his head. "Of course they are, because a simple dinner reservation couldn't just be a simple dinner reservation." He tossed her his spare blade. "Know how to use one of these?" Lyra's grip on the weapon was professional, her stance shifting to something decidedly more dangerous. "I wasn't always a scientist." "Good, because we're about to have a lot of company." Dominic pressed the call button, then took position beside the door, ready to crash their dinner service. The door slid open, and chaos erupted. What started as a simple meal had just become something far more complex, and Dominic was about to learn that sometimes the most important choices in life come down to what you refuse to eat. The guards burst in, weapons raised, only to find their dinner armed and very much not on the menu anymore. What followed was a dance of violence, precise and calculated. Dominic's military training meshed seamlessly with Lyra's unexpected combat skills. The service here is terrible. Dominic quipped, dropping one guard with a well-placed stun blast. I definitely won't be leaving a tip. Lyra's blade found gaps in the second guard's armor with surgical precision. The health code violations alone are criminal. They move through the restaurant's service corridors. Dominic's tactical experience guiding them past security checkpoints, but with each step he couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than a corrupt luxury restaurant. What kind of experiments, he asked as they waited for a patrol to pass. Lyra's patterns dimmed, her voice dropping to a whisper. They're studying human adaptation, your species' ability to survive, to thrive in any condition. They think if they can isolate that trait. She shuddered. Let's just say their menu is the least of their violations. An alarm blared through the station, and Dominic knew their time was running out. My ship's 3 levels down. We can discuss mad science after we're safely in hyperspace. But as they rounded the next corner, both realized that escaping wouldn't be as simple as they'd hoped. Sometimes, Dominic reflected, you go out for dinner and end up starting a revolution. Instead, the story of how humanity's appetite for justice would change the galaxy was just beginning. The maintenance tunnels of Nexus Station fraught with hidden power as Dominic and Lyra raced through the shadows. Security drones swept overhead, their sensor beams cutting through the dim light like hungry predators. Your ship, Lyra whispered between breaths, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with exertion. Tell me it's not registered under your real name. Dominic flashed a roguish grin. The Star Vagrant has as many identities as I have cargo holds. Port Authority knows her as a simple merchant vessel registered to one Victor Rossi. They paused at an intersection, pressing against the cold metal walls as another patrol passed. Lyra's silver eyes studied him with new interest. You're not just a cargo pilot, are you? Let's say I occasionally transport items that prefer to avoid official scrutiny. He checked his plasma pistols, charged, though I usually try to avoid kidnapping the main course from high-end restaurants. They'll have locked down all official stocking bays by now. Lyra noted, her scientific mind clearly racing through possibilities. The Crimson Plate has powerful friends. Good thing we're not heading to an official bay. And Dominic pulled up a holographic map of the station's infrastructure. There's an old maintenance stock, technically decommissioned, perfect for those of us who sometimes need to leave quickly and quietly. As they navigated the labyrinth of service corridors, Lyra filled him in on the true nature of the Crimson Plate. The restaurant was a front for something called Project Genesis, a secret research initiative studying humanity's unique genetic adaptability. Your species can survive and thrive in conditions that would kill most others, she explained. The project directors believe they can isolate and that trait. The restaurant's clients unknowingly ingest compounds designed to test various genetic modifications, and the VA specialty menu items. Dominic asked, though he already suspected the answer. Test subjects, but also a source of unique genetic material. Different species, carefully selected for specific traits when combined with human genetic markers. She shuddered. They're trying to create something new, something dangerous. A security blast door seal suddenly ahead of them, nearly taking off Dominic's nose. They're hurting us, he realized quickly, reassessing their route. This whole section is a trap. The ventilation system, Lyra suggested, already moving toward a maintenance panel. I can reconfigure the atmospheric processor's toe to create a diversion. Dominic finished, catching her meaning eye. Like how you think, Doctor. Working together, they reprogrammed the environmental controls. Moments later, emergency alerts blared as entire sections of the station registered toxic atmospheric contamination. In the ensuing chaos, they slipped through maintenance shafts toward the hidden dock, but as they emerged into the cavernous space where the Star Vagrant waited, they found they weren't alone. A tall figure in an immaculate white suit stood between them and freedom, flanked by armed guards. His crystalline skin caught the dim light, fracturing it into rainbow patterns. Lyra, he said, his voice like breaking glass, did you really think we'd let such a valuable specimen simply walk away? And you, Mr. Vale, or should I say Captain Vale? Of the third Deep Space Rangers, your military record makes you an especially interesting test subject. Dominic's grip tightened on his weapon. You seem to have me at a disadvantage. Director Prism Aura spat the name like a curse. The true monster behind Project Genesis Monster Prism's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a smile on creating the future humanity's genetic gifts. Combined with carefully selected traits from other species, imagine soldiers with crystalline healing, scouts with luminar stealth capabilities, commanders with hive mind coordination. Imagine someone who actually cares. Dominic interrupted, already calculating angles and cover positions. Lyra, when I say run, she squeezed his arm together. She whispered, I told you I wasn't always a scientist. What followed was a symphony of violence. Dominic's military precision, blended with Lyra's unexpected combat grace, her bioluminescent patterns flared, creating disorienting strobe effects that confused the guards' targeting systems. His plasma bolts found weak points in their armor, while her blade danced between them. Prism proved more challenging. His crystalline form deflected energy weapons, and physical strikes risked being shredded by his razor-sharp edges. But even he couldn't watch all angles at once working in perfect sync. They maneuvered the director into position. Dominic's shot struck a cargo container overhead, sending it crashing down. Prism dodged directly into Lyra's waiting blade, which found a critical fracture point in his crystalline form. As the director lay shattered, Lyra retrieved a data crystal from his remains. Everything's here, she said triumphantly. Project details, client lists, genetic profiles, enough to expose the whole operation. Great, Dominic replied, already heading for his ship. But maybe we celebrate after we're safely in hyperspace. I'm starting to think I should have just ordered takeout. The star vagrant engines hummed to life as station security converged on their position. But Dominic Ville hadn't survived years of smuggling runs without learning a few tricks. They slipped away through a maintenance channel barely wider than the ship itself, emerging into open space just as the first pursuit vessels launched their scrambling fighters. Lyra noted, strapping into the co-pilot's seat. Dominic's hands danced across the controls, a grin spreading across his face. Good. I'd hate for our dinner date to end too quietly. As they accelerated toward the jump point, both knew this was just the beginning. They had exposed a conspiracy that went far beyond a single corrupt restaurant. Now they just had to survive long enough to do something about it. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, humanity's destiny was about to take an unexpected turn, all because one cargo pilot decided to order the wrong thing for dinner. 3 pursuit ships exploded in their wake as the star vagrant dove through an asteroid field. Dominic's hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, using the tumbling rocks as cover while their hyperspace drive charged. You fly like someone with more than cargo experience, Lyra observed from the co-pilot's seat, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in rhythm with the ship's evasive maneuvers. Third Deep Space Rangers, Dominic confirmed, freeing them between 2 colliding asteroids, until I realized some orders shouldn't be followed. Funny how that knowledge comes in handy when escaping secret research facilities. The data crystal they taken from Director Prism pulsed with encrypted information in the ship's reader. Lyra's silver eyes narrowed as she decoded its contents, her scientific expertise finding patterns in the chaos. This is worse than I thought, she murmured. Project Genesis isn't just one restaurant or one station. It's a galaxy-wide operation. The Crimson Plate was just one node in a vast network. A warning tone chimed as their pursuers launched another volley. Dominic rolled the ship, letting the asteroids absorb the impacts. How vast? Are we talking luxury restaurants, medical facilities, even military research stations, all conducting parallel experiments, all feeding data back to a central source? Her patterns flickered with concern. They're calling it the Evolutionary Initiative, using humanity's adaptive capabilities to create a new species, one they can control, because that always works out well, Dominic muttered, engaging. The hyperspace drive stars stretched into lines around them as they escaped into faster-than-light travel. Whose funding this? Lyra's answer was cut off by a sudden power fluctuation. Emergency lights bathed the cockpit in red as multiple systems went dark. They tagged us with a tracker, she realized. It's interfering with our power grid. Good thing I never rely on just one trick. Dominic flipped a hidden switch activating backup systems he'd install for exactly this kind of situation. We need somewhere to lay low, make repairs. Any suggestions? Lyra's patterns brightened as an idea struck her. The resistance base on Helios Prime. It's hidden in the planet's perpetual storm belt. More importantly, they have resources, people who've been fighting against genetic exploitation for years, resistance fighters and perpetual storms. Dominic grinned. Sounds like my kind of vacation spot. They emerged from hyperspace into a swirling maelstrom of golden clouds. Lightning danced around them as Dominic followed Leah's coordinates, trusting her knowledge and his own instincts to guide them through the electromagnetic interference. The resistance base was a marvelous of engineering built into the eye of a permanent cyclone. As they docked, they were met by a diverse group of beings, some clearly modified, others bearing marks of failed experiments. Their leader, a towering figure named Zora, had skin that shifted like quicksilver and eyes that held centuries of wisdom. Daughter Lyra, she greeted warmly. We feared the worst when you went silent. And this must be the human who chose not to eat his dinner. Dominic Vale, he introduced himself, currently wondering if anywhere in this galaxy serves normal food without side orders of genetic manipulation. Zora's liquid metal features rippled with amusement. Come, we have much to discuss. And your ship systems need cleansing. The tracker they planted is more dangerous than you know in the base's secure briefing room. They reviewed the data crystals contents. The scope of Project Genesis was staggering. Thousands of unwitting test subjects, decades of research, all building toward a singular goal. They're not just studying human adaptability, Lyra explained, highlighting key sections of data. They're trying to engineer it, control it, create beings with humanity's survival traits, but without our unpredictability, our tendency to help. Talking Neil's escape, Dominic suggested, earning a smile from Lyra. Your species' strongest trait isn't physical, Zara interjected. It's your capacity for choice, for defying expectations. The project directors see it as a flaw to be corrected. We see it as the very thing that makes humans essential to galactic freedom. The briefing was interrupted by alarm flaxen on the monitors. Multiple ships dropped out of hyperspace, luxury vessels bearing the crimson plates insignia, but bristling with hidden weapons. They followed your tracker signal, Zara stated calmly. Good, we've been waiting for an opportunity to strike back. Dominic checked his weapon. Please tell me your hidden resistance base has decent defenses. Better. Lyra's patterns pulsed with fierce determination. It has a plan. Those ships carry their most important clients, the true architects of Project Genesis. By coming here, they delivered themselves right to us. And here I thought this would be a quiet evening of ship repairs and revolution plotting. Dominic moved to her side, drawn by her intensity. What's the plan? Lyra's smile was dangerous. Remember how their restaurants specialized in unique protein preparations? Let's show them what happens when their ingredients decide to bite back. As resistance fighters mobilized around them, Dominic realized his life had changed irrevocably the moment he made that dinner reservation. But watching Lyra ordinate the defense, her patterns blazing with purpose, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Sometimes the best meals were the ones you never got to eat. Lightning crackled through Helios Prime's perpetual storm as the crimson plate's fleet surrounded the resistance base. Inside, Dominic watched Lyra coordinate their defense, her bioluminescent patterns casting shifting shadows across tactical displays. Their ships are equipped with modified tractor beams, she explained, highlighting weapon signatures designed to capture, not kill. They want test subjects, not casualties. Their mistake, Zora added, her quicksilver form rippling with anticipation. While they try to take prisoners, will strike their command vessels. The project directors are creatures of luxury. They've never experienced real combat. Dominic studied the enemy formation, years of military experience, noting weaknesses. Those ships are heavily modified civilian vessels, impressive weapons, but their shield configurations leave gaps. If we, the base shuddered as the first attacks hit their defensive screens. Through the command center windows, energy beams pierced the storm clouds like hungry serpents. Time to show them why experimenting on humans was a bad idea. Dominic checked his weapons, ready to crash another dinner party. Lyra hand found his, her touch electric. Stay alive. I have plans for our first actual dat that don't involve prison breaks or firefights, promises, he grinned. But his eyes conveyed deeper emotions. The Resistance's counterattack was precisely coordinated, while the enemy focused on breaching their shield. Strike teams, led by Dominic and Lyra, launched from concealed hangars using the storm's interference to mask their approach aboard the lead assault shuttle. Dominic watched Lyra prepare her team. Her patterns pulsed with controlled energy as she briefed the fighters, a mix of escaped test subjects and veteran resistance members. Remember, she instructed, their arrogance is their weakness. They see us as specimens, not warriors. Let's educate them. They breached the flagship's hull through a maintenance airlock, encountering initial resistance from security forces. But these weren't ordinary guards. Their movements were enhanced, showing signs of genetic modification. Early test subjects, Lyra explained between exchanges of fire. Loyal through chemical conditioning, the directors are getting desperate. Fighting their way to the ship's core, they discovered more horrifying evidence of Project Genesis laboratories, filled with stasis pods, contained beings in various stages of modification. Data screens displayed genetic sequences highlighting human adaptive traits being spliced into other species. It's not just about creating controllable soldiers, Lyra realized, downloading crucial data. They're trying to engineer a new ruling class, beings with humanity's survival traits but stripped of our emotional capacities, our ability to empathize, to rebel against injustice. Good luck with that, Dominic muttered, covering her work. Trying to remove what makes us human, that's like trying to eat soup with a fork, a familiar crystalline voice echoed. Through the chamber, an apt metaphor. Captain Vil, Director Prism, emerged from shadows, his shattered form now grisly merged with cybernetic components. Humanity's emotional nature is precisely the flaw we seek to correct. Your species spreads through the galaxy like a virus, adapting, changing everything you touch. We aim to harness that power while removing its unpredictable elements. The only flaw here is your understanding of humanity. Dominic raised his weapon, but Prism's augmented form moved with impossible speed. The director's crystalline fingers wrapped around Dominic's throat. Your intervention was unexpected, but ultimately useful. Your genetic material, combined with Lyra's unique properties, will advance our work significantly. Speaking of unexpected, Lyra's voice rang out. Her patterns flared blindingly bright as she pressed a device against Prism's cybernetic components. You should have studied human ingenuity more carefully. The electromagnetic pulse shorted out Prism's augmentations, sending him crashing to the deck. But the victory was short-lived. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as the ship's internal defenses activated. How touching, Prism laughed through failing systems. You truly believe love can triumph over evolution, but you've already lost. The project's final phase began the moment you breached our ship's. Warning klaxons blared throughout the vessel. On monitoring screens, they watched in horror as stasis pods and laboratories across the fleet began automated activation sequences. An army of genetically engineered soldiers. Prism bloated, perfect beings with humanity's adaptability, but none of its weaknesses. The next step in controlled evolution. Lyra's patterns pulsed with sudden realization. No, you've made a fundamental mistake. Human adaptability isn't just physical, it's emotional, spiritual. You can't separate them without losing what makes the trait special. As if proving her words, alarms changed tone. The stasis pods were malfunctioning, their occupants rejecting the modifications. The engineered perfection was collapsing. You wanted to remove what makes us human, Dominic said, helping Lyra plant explosive charges as the ship began to tear itself apart. But that's exactly what makes us strong. They fought their way back to their shuttle through waves of failing security systems. Behind them, the flagship's laboratories imploded. Decades of twisted research destroying itself in the Resistance base's medical bay. Later, Dominic watched Lyra analyze the recovered data. Her patterns had settled into a contemplative rhythm that he was learning to read. They'll try again, she said softly, the desire to control evolution to perfect life. According to their standards, it won't end here. Dominic took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt. Then we'll stop them again, though. Maybe next time we skip the fancy restaurant and go straight to overthrowing evil. Scientists' her laugh was musical, her patterns brightening. Deal though. I'm curious, what would you have ordered if your dinner hadn't begged for help? Doesn't matter, he replied, pulling her close. I got something better than any meal. But their moment of peace was interrupted by urgent communications from resistance outposts across the galaxy. Project Genesis had more layers than they'd imagined, and its architects weren't finished. The war for humanity's genetic future was just beginning. Sometimes the most important battles weren't fought with weapons, but with the very essence of what made us human. And as Dominic aged Lyra, watching storm clouds race across Helios' prime sky, he knew he'd keep fighting, not just for survival, but for the right to choose who and what we become. The galactic core glowed like molten gold through the star-vagrant view screen. Dominic and Lyra stood at the helm, watching as the massive research station called the Kitchen came into view. This was where Project Genesis had begun, and this was where they would end its security scan complete. Lyra announced, her bioluminescent pattern steady with determination. The genetic masking agent is working. They're reading us as one of their supply ships. 3 months had passed since their battle at Helios Prime. 3 months of uncovering hidden laboratories, freeing test subjects, and piecing together the true scope of the conspiracy. The resistance had grown stronger with each victory, but the project's leaders had remained elusive until now. Hard to believe it all started with a dinner reservation, Dominic mused, guiding their ship toward the docking bay. Though I have to admit, you're the best thing I never got to eat. Elle's patterns flickered with amusement. Such a romantic, ready to meet the real chefs behind this nightmare. The station's interior was a maze of pristine laboratories and luxury accommodations, their disguises. Dominic as a security officer, Lyra's patterns, masked to match authorized personnel, got them through initial checkpoints, but both knew the real challenge lay ahead. In his ear, Zora's voice crackled through their secure, calm resistance cells are in position around the sector. The moment you expose the Council, we move on every known Genesis facility simultaneously. The part of the station was a massive circular chamber called the Tasting Room. Here the project's governing council gathered to observe their experiments from behind Onway Quantum Blast. Today they'd gathered to witness their crowning achievement. Honored members of the Evolutionary Council, a smooth voice echoed as Dominic and Lyra slipped into observer positions. Today marks the culmination of decades of research. The speaker was tall and elegant, his form shifting between states of matter like living Mercury. Grand Architect Voss, the true mastermind behind Project Genesis. Behind him, masked stasis tanks held suspended figures, the latest generation of their enhanced beings. Through careful cultivation of human genetic material, Voss continued, we have finally achieved stable hybridization. These specimens possess humanity's remarkable adaptability. Without their chaotic emotional nature, perfect beings to guide our galaxy's evolution. Remarkable, one council member observed. But what of the contamination risk if they retain any human tendencies toward rebellion? Impossible, Voss assured them. Their genetic structure has been purified, stripped of such primitive instincts. Observed, the stasis tanks began to drain, but as their occupants awakened, something was wrong. Instead of the mindless obedience their creators expected, awareness blazed in their eyes. One by one they turned toward the observation window. Now Aura whispered into her seat. Throughout the station, hidden resistance fighters sprang into action. Security systems crashed as carefully planted virus programs activated emergency bulkheads, sealed, trapping the council in their own observatory. Dominic stepped forward, dropping his disguise. Surprised architect, you should have studied human history more carefully. Every time someone tries to create perfect beings, they forget one crucial detail: the complexity of the human spirit cannot be filtered out. Lyra added, her true patterns blazing as she revealed herself. It's not a flaw to be removed, it's the source of our strength. Flaws, mercurial form, rippled with rage. Guards kill these insects, but when the security forces burst in, they found themselves facing not just Dominic and Lyra, but the awakened test subjects as well, beings engineered to be perfect soldiers, now turning against their creators. You tried to strip away our humanity, one of them spoke, her voice carrying echoes of countless modified genetics. Instead, you made us more human than ever. We choose freedom. The battle was fierce but brief. The council members used to observing from safety found themselves overwhelmed by the very specimens they'd sought to control throughout the sector. Resistance forces struck at Genesis facilities, freeing test subjects and exposing decades of illegal experimentation. In the chaos, Voss attempted to escape. Through a hidden passage, he found himself face to face with Dominic and Lyra. "You don't understand," the architect snarled. "Humanity is a disease spreading chaos through ordered space. We sought to cure it, to harness your adaptability while removing the infection of free will." "That's where you failed," Dominic replied. "Our chaos, our emotions, our ability to choose, that's not a disease. It's a gift, one we'll share on our own terms." Lyra stepped forward, her patterns forming complex equations. "Your own data proves it. Every attempt to suppress human nature only makes it stronger. Evolution isn't about control, it's about growth, change, and choice." As station security forces, loyal to the resistance, took the council into custody, Dominic and Lyra found themselves in the ruins of the main laboratory. Screens still displayed genetic sequences, showing the complex dance of human adaptability. "So," Lyra said softly, her pattern synchronizing with Dominic's heartbeat, "what happens now?" "Well," he pulled her close, "I still owe you that proper dinner date somewhere without any genetic experiments or revolution plotting. Though I have to admit life's been a lot more interesting since I ordered the wrong thing that night." "Who says it was wrong?" Her patterns painted stars across his skin. "Some choices look like mistakes until you see where they lead above them." The galactic core burned with ancient light, humanity's tendency to upset careful plans, to choose passion over perfection, had changed the course of evolution once again. And in the aftermath of revolution, two beings from different worlds held each other, proving that the greatest adaptations come not from careful engineering, but from the heart. "You know," Dominic mused, "I never did get an actual meal at that restaurant." Lyra laughed, the sound echoing through newly freed corridors. "Then let's go find somewhere that serves actual food. Though I have to warn you, after all this my standards are pretty high." "Mine too," he replied, looking at her with wonder, "but I have a feeling we'll figure it out together." As the star vagrant carried them away from the station, alerts were already spreading through galactic news networks. The truth about Project Genesis was exposed, and with it came a new understanding of humanity's role in the cosmic community, not as a force to be controlled or modified, but as proof that true evolution comes from embracing chaos, choice, and love. Sometimes the best meals are the ones we never eat, and the greatest journeys start with a single unexpected choice. For Dominic Ville, that choice had led him not just to save a life, but to find one worth living. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a former cargo pilot and a luminous scientists charted a course toward whatever adventure waited next. After all, the galaxy was full of restaurants that didn't serve sentient beings. They had plenty of time to try them all.